What's up, guys? Danny Malloy here with the Addiction Prevention Coalition. This is another installment of our Facebook Live video series. We meet with people in the community who may have a tie-in with addiction or recovery, people who are making a difference in the community. The Addiction Prevention Coalition, we have a resource directory online. If you go to apcbham.org, you can find help if you need help with addiction or recovery. We've compiled 140 providers on that website, which is free to use. So for all your recovery needs, go there if you need help. We also have 19 chapters in the schools where we work with students in the local area in Alabama. So check us out online. Today is an exciting day for me. I'm here with one of my good friends, Lauren Sisler. We are here at...
Dap it up, dap it up. Woo!
We are here at al.com. Has been gracious enough to let us film in this great little room here with a cool backdrop. Lauren works here at al.com. Lauren grew up in Virginia. She came to Birmingham in 2011 for a sports reporting job at a local CBS affiliate. She now works for al.com, covering Alabama and Auburn football. And she also does...
What's that? What kind of football?
Alabama and Auburn.
Auburn football?
Yeah, you can translate.
Auburn football.
Auburn. How is that?
Alabama and Auburn football.
That's right. She also does a lot of work with the SEC network. She's out there. But more impressive than that, since I met Lauren, I guess 4 years ago, she is so passionate about spreading the word, sharing her story. I've honestly never met anyone who is so outspoken and so passionate and so willing to give herself to a cause such as this. And I won't share her whole story with you. I'm going to let her do that. So thank you for coming on Facebook Live.
Yes, thank you. It's so exciting to be here. Thank you for coming here to the office today at al.com. We have a beautiful office here downtown on First Avenue, and it's been a journey for me. You know, I came to Alabama back in 2011, was working at CBS 42 as a sports reporter there, covering primarily football, sports year-round, and then about a year and a half ago came over here to al.com, and my main beat, Alabama and Auburn football. Auburn football, pretty much year-round, because as we know here in the state of Alabama, it is 365. That's all we talk about, football, 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 football. And what I've come to learn is we don't measure, here in this state, it's not measured by minutes, hours, days. It is measured by football seasons.
So, well, the first thing people asked me when I got here from Boston was, so who do you go for? And I was like, the Red Sox and the Patriots. And they're like, nah, that's not going to work. Alabama, Auburn.
Alabama or Auburn. Exactly.
I always say this: it's whoever I'm hanging out with, and whoever wants to give me some tickets. That's the team I go for.
Well, and it's what's amazing is ever since I've been here in Birmingham, when I go to the outside and I say, "Oh yeah, I live in Alabama. I cover Alabama and Auburn," they immediately think that my allegiance is with one of those teams. And what I have to remind them is, I went to Rutgers University. I was a gymnast there in 2002 to 2006. So you know, I'm getting up there.
That's right.
Getting up there in age. Just turned 33. Woo. But, you know, I'm very grateful for that opportunity to go to Rutgers, to obviously get a great education, and it really set me up for my career here in broadcasting. And so just a little bit about that. Coming here in 2011 really got my feet wet, was able to learn television, live television, get to do a lot of that. And then coming over here to al.com, what's really cool here is we really are in front of this digital wave. It's different because, you know, local TV, you're kind of waiting for the 5 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news. Here, you know, we produce content and it goes up right away. And so we're really able to appeal to the masses in terms of being able to put the content out there like we're doing now on Facebook Live. People want to see it now. They want to consume their content when it's convenient for them. And so this really works. So it's been awesome. And then this year I got to join on with SEC Network's SEC Nation. That is our traveling pregame show every Saturday. So tune in, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. It's a lot of fun. We travel all over the SEC and get to talk with the coaches and the fans and the athletes and really just personalize some of the stuff that's going around in the football world, and of course give you all your news and analysis. So it's been a lot of fun, but I really appreciate the warm welcome, and it's been nice getting to know this guy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So let's just jump right into this. So Lauren, you started volunteering with us at APC about 4 years ago, and that's when we had met. Why is the Addiction Prevention Coalition important to you? Where does your passion come from? Why do you've spoken at our events, you show up at almost all of our events, so why is this important to you?
Well, this is something, addiction has been a part of my life for many years, and it's something that started back when I lost both of my parents. So to give you a little bit of a backstory about how I'm touched and impacted by addiction, myself and my entire family has been affected by this, tragedy. And so I'm in college. As I said, I went to Rutgers University. It's my freshman year. It's my second semester. And I call both of my parents every single day just to check in, to give them just, the I love yous, the encouragement, the advice. Oh, I had a bad day in practice. Mom was always there to lift me up. And, just the I love yous. And I was really close with my parents. My parents were two people that I would consider my very best friends. And when you kind of looked at our family, it was me and my older brother, Alan, and we pretty much had everything we ever needed growing up. And my parents always encouraged us and pushed us, focus on your academics and your athletics, and we'll take care of the rest. So really we had what you would consider that picture-perfect family. And to most people on the outside, of course, we all know that every family has its own dysfunction.
Sure.
But for the most part, we were a very close-knit, tight family, that all-American traditional family. And, everything seemed great. I'm at school. I'm enjoying college. I'm on a scholarship, so my school's being paid for. It's what I worked my entire childhood for, to be on a gymnastics scholarship. So I'm extremely fortunate to be there, living it up, enjoying the college life, enjoying my teammates, my coaches, meeting new friends. And as I said, I called my parents that night and exchanged the I love yous, hung up the phone, and went to bed as usual. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from my father, who seemed distressed. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? And he said, Lauren, your mom has died. And I remember it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wait, what? Like, mom died? What do you mean mom died? I don't understand. And essentially, he said, I just need you to get to the airport and get on the next plane you can, and I will be at the airport to pick you up. And so I pack my bags. I'm frantic. I'm, in tears, just trying to figure out what in the world could have happened. No explanation from my father at all as to how my mom died. Get on that plane, and, I just remember all I wanted to do at that point was to run and jump in my dad's arms. I could not get off that plane soon enough and get to the airport and jump into his arms. And I remember wheeling my suitcase out to the curb, thinking he was going to be there waiting to pick me up, and he's nowhere to be found, and I can't get in touch with anybody. And finally, my uncle Mike and my cousin Justin pull up to the curb and, jump out of the car and, of course, give me a hug. And everybody's in tears and trying to take in what has just happened. And we get in the car and start driving, and I finally worked up the courage and said, well, Uncle Mike, where's my dad? He said he was going to be here to pick me up. And he turned around and said, Lauren, I'm sorry, but your dad has passed away too. And I just remember just feeling like my world had just shut down. Like, there's no way that this could possibly happen. Like, you go from, literally, I just talked to them on the phone the night before. I love you. They're thinking about me. They can't wait till the next time they get to come to Rutgers and visit me. And here they are, gone from this world. And no explanation at all. And I think that was the hardest part for me, is not knowing what took their lives. And so, still to this day, it's been over 14 years. It'll be 15 years in March. Still to this day, very few answers to all the questions that we have as a family.
That's unbelievably tragic. And I think we can both agree that addiction does not discriminate. It happens to anyone and can happen to anyone. So I'm very sorry for your loss. You've shared your story now on a very large scale. You've shared it at some of our events. I see you on Facebook all the time sharing your story. And it seems to come second nature, but it hasn't always been that way. So will you share a little bit about that, about what really is prompting you to get out there now, and that process of you wrestling with, should I share the story, the fears that come with that, and all about that?
Well, in learning what really happened to my parents. So obviously it became a long process because we really didn't know as a family what had ultimately stole their lives. My mom was battling with degenerative disc disease. My father had chronic back pain, also suffered with depression, post-traumatic stress disorder from his service in the military, and both of them were seeking pain management from the same pain management doctor. And what started off as OxyContin, as you know, a very potent drug, ended up escalating to fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than any other drug on the market. And it was something that they were taking in cycles and never should have been on that type of drug to begin with. Neither one of them were terminally ill. And so what transpired in about a 3-year time span was kind of news to us. We didn't see all of this happening. It was kind of happening behind closed doors. So as somebody that was in college, was really not privy to what was going on, my parents, did a really good job of kind of concealing all this, concealing their pain and concealing what was considered their addiction sickness. And ultimately for me, it took me every bit of 7 years to really confront that. Because when they passed away, everybody would say, well, what happened to your parents? How did they die? And I would kind of grapple with what really happened. And it got to the point where I would tell the story over and over again. I would sugarcoat it. Well, my dad died of respiratory failure. My mom died of respiratory failure. True, that is very true. But from addiction, from an overdose. And I would not be able to share that in the same sentence with their names. Because my biggest fear is that I would destroy their legacy, everything that they built. And, they were loved by so many people. And I just could not tear down those walls and allow people to see them for something that they weren't. Because my fear was people would judge them for how they died, not for how they lived. And so it took every bit of 7 years to really be able to come to grips with it. Grappling with this. And really what happened is my Aunt Linda, my mom's older sister, basically started tearing the walls down. Her and my Uncle Mike basically became my parents, like overnight. Jumped in immediately, were there for me. I was 18, but I didn't even know how to write a check. And so what was amazing about it is they, dove right in and basically stood in as my parents and really helped me to kind of come to terms with this. They really had to jump in and help pick up the pieces and ultimately try to help encourage me to get to that next step, to keep moving in my life and not to go down the wrong path. And so my aunt really did a good job in sort of breaking those walls down. Don't get me wrong. There were days where we, her and I would butt heads and I'd be upset because she's trying to tell me the truth. I didn't want to hear the truth. I was scared of the truth. I didn't want to acknowledge it. And finally, about 7 years later, the walls came down and I realized, I said, I can't change the way that they died. That will never change. But I know how they lived their lives. I know how they impacted other people's lives. And now it's my job to use their story to help other people. And so it was slow and steady, sharing it with one person, sharing it with my closest friends. Even my best friend didn't know how my parents died. And so being able to share it with one person and the next person, then it became a group of people. And next thing you know, now it's large groups and communities. And it's something that, I'm very thankful for. Because one thing I say when I share their story, just like I am now, I used to be so fearful that I would be disappointing them. But now I feel them sitting right here with me as I share their story, encouraging me and applauding me for using this as something positive and giving other people a chance to maybe change their destiny, their outcome, and to give people hope.
That's amazing. Something you said which is so important, I think, in society or in general right now, we look at addiction like, it's, well, if I'm going to be an addict, I'm just going to go live under the bridge, and that's where it all starts. A lot of people don't realize that addiction starts many different places. And some people it starts at the doctor's office. Some people it starts out hanging out with friends. It does not discriminate, and it can literally happen to anyone. And I think something that what you're trying to do and what we're trying to do is we're trying to get that stigma and tear down that wall, because these aren't bad people. I had a cousin pass away 3 years ago, and he was like the nicest guy you'd ever meet. If you walked in this building, he would hold the door for you. He would ask you what you need. And it's tragic. These are people that maybe made a bad decision here or there and just didn't understand the power of these drugs.
Well, I think there's choice and there's circumstance, and I think everybody has to make that choice. No, my parents didn't choose to have all the pain that they were in. My mom had 9 surgeries in a 3-year period, but also it got to a point where they were having to self-medicate. So, my parents passed away within like 5 hours of each other. And it was one of those situations that, my mom passed away, my father passed away, and, both were deemed unintentional overdoses. But at the end of the day, you don't know what kind of pain somebody's in. I don't know how much pain my parents were feeling. I don't know what it took for them to get out of bed in the morning. I can't be inside their body to understand what they were going through physically, emotionally, and all the other stuff going along with it, the finances, everything that came along with this addiction. But like you said, I could not use the word overdose or addiction in the same sentence as them. But now I look at it like they're no different. Just because they were prescribed these drugs and unfortunately took too much, I don't view my parents any differently than the homeless man living under the bridge that, was a heroin addict that lost everything, because chances are he was in the same situation. At some point in time, he probably had a roof over his head, a family and kids. All those things circumstantially, everybody has a story, and everybody's story ends differently, has a different ending or a different path. But are they any better than the person that, makes a bad choice in high school and gets hooked on narcotics or, heroin or whatever it may be? No, everybody is the same. And unfortunately, that's why we have to attack this, that there is no level of, addiction, like you said, the geographical, doesn't matter what kind of job you hold, doesn't matter, how much money you make, what neighborhood you live in. None of that stuff matters, and you can attest to that.
Yeah. So just to be very clear, we are not demonizing medication. Some people need medication. Mm-hmm. Medication is for a purpose. And so we just want to be very clear about that. I was a heroin addict for 7 years, and before that I did Oxycontin for many years, and I've been to 20 rehabs. And I can tell you that when I got into it, I wasn't trying to be addicted. I wasn't trying to be a drug addict. I was trying to just have some fun and loosen up. But I have addiction in my family, and I was predisposed to this, and I saw it growing up. And I think a lot of times right now in society, people want to talk about, is it a choice? Is it a disease? Is it a moral thing? Is it this? Is it that? And unfortunately, we want one answer, but my answer is yes, it's everything. It can be anything. Mm-hmm. It can be the person who was prescribed that didn't understand the power of these potent drugs. Or it could be someone who just saw someone else doing it and they decided to go do it. It's an onion. And unless we look at the individual and say, how do we help the individual? Mm-hmm. We don't prescribe what worked for us, because that may not be what someone else needs. Yeah. And I think we have to do what you're trying to do, and that's tear down the stigma. That's get the word out by any means necessary. I've seen you speak to a group of 1,000 students before. You will literally talk to anyone, and that's what I like about you. It's not, I need this fancy thing. I've seen you talk to 3 people in a room, and that's the way I am too.
If you can impact one person, and I think that's, again, where this comes into play, is that everybody has to have that realization that there is no clear-cut reason for why addiction happens. Was it a choice? Were they predisposed to it? All those things factor in, by all means. And just because somebody made that choice when they were younger doesn't necessarily mean they're condemned because they made this choice. But I can sure tell you that most people that I know that are in addiction and find recovery like yourself, look back on it and realize the hard road it is to recovery. And I think that's where the APC comes in, to helping people that are going to be faced with these tough decisions. And that's one thing I really try to preach and share with these kids, especially, that are going to be faced with these decisions. Because like you said, a lot of people aren't educated on it. They go get their wisdom teeth pulled. They're getting prescribed, however many Lortab, and don't realize the dangers of this. They're doing what they're told is prescribed, and they're like, oh, this takes the pain away. But there has to be a level of understanding and education, and I think that's where we all need to team up. The communities, the healthcare system, because I think addiction obviously falls under a bigger umbrella of mental illness. And I think mental illness is frowned upon. It's looked at differently. You can go to the hospital with a heart attack and you're going to be treated one way, but suddenly if you've got a brain disorder, it's treated completely different. And I think that's something that we have to get in front of this. We have to help those that need the help and help give them the hope and give them the recovery resources, but we also have to get in front of this and prevent that. And that's what I love about what the APC is doing, because we're helping these kids and these students educate them, and they can educate others on the dangers of what this disease really is.
That's great. That is. I couldn't have said that better myself. So one amazing thing, if I look back at my life and if I told you my story, which I won't do, I had a lot of trauma in my life. My mother and father got divorced. I saw a lot of terrible things as a kid. My father was an alcoholic. There's just a lot of things that went on that kind of traumatized me as a young person, and I really learned how to numb that pain. I went to drugs and alcohol to kind of cover up some of that stuff. I was also predisposed. But one amazing thing that I have found, and this is just a little nugget, that you have never done drugs or alcohol. Never, even before your parents, you just made a decision, I'm not going to do this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people ask me when, they offer a drink and, oh, no, I don't drink, and, oh, you got to drive home tonight. No, I actually just don't drink at all. And it's something that I'm very grateful for, and even still to this day, think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life because of the history and not knowing, as you said, the hereditary aspect. But just in general, when I was 15, when I was really starting to come across a lot of those decisions of the peer pressures and the, ooh, try this drug, try this drink, I just told myself, and I told everybody else, I'm not really interested. It's not something that, I have any desire to know or understand what that euphoria is like. And a lot of that is because I was very proud of my identity and growing that identity, and I didn't feel like I needed a mind-altering substance to, help me to develop that identity. I was proud of who I was and wanted to continue on that path. So long before I even knew my parents had a problem, my dad struggled with alcoholism. That is something that we knew growing up as children, but I really didn't grasp the concept. But I was very fortunate that I just chose no drugs, no alcohol. And again, I'm so grateful for it because when I see the struggle that people have with this every single day, I think to myself, as much as it's impacted me, on this end and watching my parents go through this, I'm also grateful that I'm not waking up every morning with that decision of, okay, am I going to pick up this drink or am I going to do this drug to help me get by? And it's just, again, a decision that I made, and it's just something I encourage people, to try to go away from the peer pressures. I think that's the unfortunate thing with our society today. There's so many peer pressures and people wanting to fit in and to feel like they're a part of a certain group. But, I stood up to it, and what's crazy is, my friend group didn't change. I didn't get exiled from my friends because I chose not to drink or do drugs. They accepted it, and that was it. And I moved on, and, I'm just very thankful that now, I'm in my 30s and got through college without it and had just as much fun as everybody else. I used to be a DJ Sisler. Boop, boop. Great people watching, especially when you're sober. But, I've just enjoyed every minute of it, and now, I just feel like it's on me to share my parents' story from their perspective and what they went through, but also what I've learned in the whole process.
Well, that's amazing. You can find Lauren these days hanging out with Nick Saban or Charles Barkley, and how would you say
Charles Barkley.
So there you
or
go.
Chuck.
The round mound of rebound. But Lauren, seriously, thank you so much. You're an amazing individual. You're a family friend of ours personally, and we just love you. We love what you do. So thank you. And we just want to say a big shout out to AL.com for letting us come film in this beautiful facility, and just for all the stuff that they do in the community. And I'd just like to wrap up by saying this. If you know someone that needs help, go to apcbham.org. We have a resource directory where people can find detox, transitional housing, rehabilitation. It's 24/7. It's free. Go on there, get the resources that you need, And stay tuned because we're going to have a lot of great Facebook Lives coming soon. Guys, thank you so much. And from me and Lauren Sisler, we'll see you next time.